Good evening, day 9 of the ASF Virtualpalooza. Super excited to have you guys here as always. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Thursday, right? It's Thursday. You guys are in for another treat tonight. I'm so excited to introduce our speaker tonight. But before then, just want to make sure I told you guys every single night I would lift up one of you guys and your awesome creativity and what you do to raise funds for awareness for Angelman syndrome. And tonight I got my hat. So tonight is Cocoa for a Cure hat. So this young man named Quinn raises funds every single year by doing a cocoa stand for his sister. He's been doing it for the past 3 or 4 years, and he's raised over $200,000 for research. This little boy, 10 years old, for his twin sister, Emma, who has Angelman syndrome. So I had to lift up my hat tonight to show you all. So thank you guys for being here. Just a couple of reminders. If this is your first time joining us at a Virtualpalooza, the good news is you can ask questions throughout the session. You will see on the right pane all the opportunities for you to chat or ask a question. We will get to a question and answer time once we're done with this session. Also, because you've come tonight, you are going to get your own awesome ASF Virtualpalooza t-shirt sent to your home in the next couple of weeks because you've attended tonight as our thank you for being a part of our first ever virtual education webinar. So we're so excited to be able to do that. Also, don't forget, you've got to sign up for that national walk. September 5th is going to be our kickoff rally, and you don't want to miss it because it's going to be unbelievable, and we're going to have a really awesome special guest. So enough of me talking. Let's get to the main event tonight. We're so excited to introduce my friend, Marian Ellert, who is the founder of Protected Tomorrows. She has been the part of this organization and founded it over 30 years ago, and all based on her passion and her love and her commitment for her sister. So I'm sure she'll share her story, but it's beautiful. And it's wonderful to always see individuals like siblings, sisters, aunts, uncles, who are out there really advocating for our individuals with diverse needs. So we're really excited to have her here tonight to talk with you all about our topic about putting together a plan for our future for our individuals with Angelman syndrome. So I'm going to go ahead, Marianne. I'm going to pass over the presenter mode to you, and then I will introduce my dear, wonderful friend, Marianne. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to be a guest speaker tonight, and I'm looking forward to sharing the evening with you. I'm proud to have my Angelman's shirt on, so that was, thank you, I love it. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. I'm going to try to cover a lot in just under an hour, so we have time for questions. So I'm going to try not to go too fast, but again, I do this because of my sister, Marcia. She had cerebral palsy. I was 6 and she is 2 when we found out that she had cerebral palsy. And actually, she changed my life. I was just saying, we were talking about how I do what I do because of her. She taught me what's really important in the world. So she was a twin. Her twin did not have a disability. And when I was 6, my parents told me I was going to have responsibilities for her, which I thought was really cool at the age of 6. As I got older, I had a lot of responsibilities for her. She did pass away at the age of 39 from a seizure in her sleep. But in those years that she was alive, she taught me everything I needed to know. And then when I started my business 30 years ago, she was still around, and I was working with my parents, and I asked how they had planned for her. And they really hadn't done much planning. I knew a lot about financial things, but at that time, didn't know a lot about SSI and Medicaid and Medicare, and special needs trusts were just starting. And so that's how I got started. I really realized that my parents, even though they were very, very involved in her life and in Special Olympics and all the programs that she needed to be involved in, they didn't have proper legal advice. They didn't really understand the benefits she had. And so that's how I got started. So my mission is to make sure that anyone who has a child with a disability, that child has a safe and fulfilling life. That's my mission. Since that time, I also have a son with a disability. And so my mission has changed to be caring for my son, but also my parents became disabled as they got older. So I've been a caregiver in many capacities. And so I have the honor of, as a financial person, being able to use my training in conjunction with my life skills to be able to make a difference. So the one thing I do know is when we're doing planning, it's overwhelming. I mean, when I talk to families, sometimes we're not talking to them to their child's 16 or 17, sometimes younger, sometimes they're 2, sometimes they're 22. Everybody is overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed with government benefits and the legal things they need to do. So I thought, okay, the only way I can really help families is do one thing at a time. So, and we're doing one thing at a time. We just need to start. So there's going to be a lot of information tonight. We have a website. So if you need some more information, you can always go to our website and look some things up I'm talking about. And we were just talking about that one of my fun things I do is sometimes incubate other charities. So we have a charity, but the only thing we do is help other charities. And one of them is Tails for Life. So it's my passion to help families who need a service dog find the right dog and get it funded and get the dog trained. So this is Augie. He was trained to be my son's special needs dog. And he is just darling and fun, but trained to be a service dog now. Okay, so my goal today is to give you awareness because we're going to talk about a lot of things. And I hope that when we're done, you're going to find one thing, not 10, just one that you need to take action on, because I believe that we can start doing things if we have one thing we pick. So let's get started. I'm going to take you through some of the stages that we talk about. I'm going to talk about all of them, maybe not in order, but I'm going to try to take you through a little journey tonight. So the first place we always start when we're working with a family is to be really candid with ourselves. Many times I talk to families. I had a meeting today actually with a family and they're in their 80s and their child with disability is 50. And they said this was the first conversation they've had because they didn't want to talk about what happens if they're gone? What happens if, what do they do? So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. And if you could just take a minute and jot them down, because this is what I want. This is how we build. Everything we do is based on these 2 questions. So the first question is, what is the best thing that can happen for your child? Without using the word cure, because that's not something that I can control or you can control deeply. So what is the best thing for their future that you would like to see happen for them? Okay. Then the second question I'd like you to answer is, what is your biggest fear? So what's the best thing that can happen and what is your biggest fear? So I'll just give you some insights as to what I hear a lot. Typically the best thing has happened is people want their child to be happy and safe, right? People say a lot of other things, but mostly they want them to have a full life as best as they can and to be happy. And then the biggest fear I hear is abuse. So knowing those 2 things, then we have a lot of other things. Some of it is having enough money to make sure the child's okay. Some of it is having the child have a safe place to live. It's all of those things, right? Whatever it is for you, whatever you wrote those things down, the best thing that can happen and the biggest you want to avoid or the biggest fear you have, those are the things that we always ask ourselves in all of the other planning that we do. So as we go through this stages of things we want to think about, I want you to be thinking about those 2 questions and say, is the decision I'm making today, and there's lots of decisions we make, right? The decision I'm making today, is this going to make my child happy, safe, and not at risk of whatever I'm afraid of, okay? So these are what I call the benchmarks. Whatever you decide you want, we have to measure, okay? We have to measure against them. Then once we know that, then we can start thinking about, how do I create the map of the future for my child? Now, some of you might have a 2-year-old, 20-year-old, 14-year-old. How do we create their future map? So when I think about it, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you need to be okay, okay? We always think about our children. We're always thinking about them. But they're not okay if you're not okay. So this is not a financial planning class. but I do know that you have to know your own situation. You have to know what you're worth. You have to know what you have. You have to know if you have disability, if something happens to you. You have to know if you should get long-term care insurance. So if later you get disabled yourself, would insurance cover it? You need to understand your life insurance. You understand your investments, because when you retire, you have to have enough to provide for you, and then you have to have enough to provide for also your child, because you're not retiring for two. I call it retiring for three. We have a whole class we do on retiring for three. So how do you retire? How do you take your Social Security? How should you do things to make sure that your child's okay? But secondly, your retirement goes beyond you. So your retirement has to fund you and your child. So it's your lifetime, and then after that, your child's lifetime. So A, make sure you're okay, all right? Then you're gonna need to know some information, because as you're planning for your child, I want you to make sure you understand your net worth. What do you have? So a net worth statement says on the left side, what do I own? The right side, what do I owe? And therefore, if I take what I own minus what I owe, it's my net worth. Because you're going to need that information when you're planning for your financial plan, and you're going to need it when you meet with an attorney for a special needs trust. You also have to know what's coming in and out. So in your own planning, you need to know how much money is coming in, how much Social Security will I get, when will I get it, when could I get it, how much am I spending now, and then in retirement. And in your retirement plan, you look on the second column, you will see something that says PWD future care. You can't just worry about your own. So if you're seeing working with a financial person, you have to remember that you're not just funding yourselves, but you're funding someone else, and it has to be in your budget. Then you can start thinking about your child. So take care of you first. Make sure you have your own financial plan. Make sure you're working with someone who understands the nuances, which we're going to talk about, and how much money are you going to need then for your child with special needs. When I started doing this 30 years ago, I used to tell people, wow, it's a big stack of money. That's what I can tell you. You're going to need a lot to provide for your child, because it's like putting a child through college for the rest of through Harvard for the rest of their life. It costs a lot, right? And when we look at how much money it takes us to retire, and then we're going to add a third person, it's a lot. I can actually help you figure that out. In the old days, I didn't get to this detail, but I will tell you, this is what I know. I know that if you just say what you want for your child to be happy and safe, you have to dig deeper, okay? You don't get to say for yourself, I want to retire and I want to be happy in retirement. You do work, right? You figure out what are you going to need in retirement. You put a cash flow together. You do calculations. You use software. You figure out how much you're going to need. We're going to do that with your child too. We're going to do a quote unquote retirement plan to say how much you're going to need for the rest of their life to make sure they're safe and happy. And then we're going to start to build a vision. So this is the hardest step. This is step 2. This is hard, okay? I'm not going to say it's easy. And sometimes when I talk to people about this, they look at me like I've been smoking something, because we're asking you, where do you think your child's going to live? What are their medical needs and costs? What is their fun? All the things in their lives that we need to be thinking about. And we can then build a plan around it. And then we can figure out where the money's going to come from to pay for that. So you can see in this diagram that benefits is the bottom of this pyramid, and it holds things together. So we're going to spend some time talking about government benefits tonight. But you can also save, and there's all kinds of insurances you could have to fund your child. There's also grandma and grandpa, right? We have to talk about them. Did your child do any kind of work? What's your work going to do? Are you going to work longer than you thought? And all the other things that come into place. So the money's going to come to support that life plan. And we build the life plan by thinking about the details. That's how we think about our own retirement. We say, okay, what's coming in, what's going out? So for your child, you have to do that in different stages though, okay? So on the left side here, you will see all the different age groups, 0 to 3, 4 to 18. What age is your child? Are they in transition? Are they out of transition? And the last one, nobody can check that because you can't be in that category yet, but there is a stage at life where you're not here anymore, life without you. So your child has many stages. And each of those we have to think about, what's it gonna look like? So while they're living with you, it's easy. The numbers they need are built into your cash flow. But once they get out of school and once you're not around anymore, we have to start thinking about, and numbers make us think about the detail. They just do. So how much SSI and Medicaid, what will that be funding? Will family be contributing? Grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, will they be contributing? And then we can build the expenses. Now, I have broad categories here, but on our website, we have many worksheets for you that you can use to say, what are the living expenses for my child? What are the medical, recreation? I did it in categories. So if the income coming in from government benefits, let's say is $10,000 a year, and the expenses are $40,000 a year, we're going to be short $30,000 a year. And if I'm talking my child's lifetime of 10 or 15 years beyond me, that's how much I've got to provide in today's dollars. Yep. So there's some work here to be done. So if that's the case, then we probably have to provide beyond us some significant dollars. There's things you need to know about your own planning that I'm going to just touch on really quickly before we talk about benefits. You need to know about your pension. So when you're doing your own planning, you have a pension. One of the things you want to ask about your pension is, does your pension go beyond husband and wife? So there are pensions like police pensions and teachers' pensions that if I was the spouse and I was the teacher, I will get a pension. When I pass away, my spouse will maybe get half of my pension. And some pensions on the death of both parents pays for a child with special needs. So that's something you should research, because besides government benefits, there might be benefits that you have that we need to know about when we're doing our planning. So let's talk about government benefits. This appears sometimes and sounds like it's very complicated. And when we're working with the government, it feels complicated because it's hard these days, especially these days, to get someone who can answer our questions straightforward. So I'm going to give you a good overview of this tonight so that you understand the benefits and how they work and how they're going to fit into your child's future. So some of the benefits we get are entitlements. That meant we bought them, right? And entitlements means something we're entitled to. And some of the benefits we get, we need. We're not entitled to them, we need them. Some of them are cash, and some of them pay for healthcare and a job coach and residential services and programs. So let's go through one at a time. Social Security Disability is a program that is an entitlement. They take money out of our check called FICA, and it goes into the Social Security world. And if I become disabled, I can apply for a benefit, okay? But there's a rule to prove I'm disabled. So if I have worked all these years and I become disabled, I can go to Social Security and say, I have a disability. I will have to prove it with my medical records. And I will have to prove that because of my disability, I won't be able to make the income that I was making before, that I will have a limitation. And that income limitation is called substantial gainful activity. And every year a number is proclaimed, and it's just under $1,200 or so usually. And it goes up, goes up every year by a little bit, okay? So just think in that range of numbers, because I know people may listen to this in recording, and if I give the number today, it might change. So it's in that range that I have to prove that because of my disability, I can't make a certain amount, okay? If I can't make that, Social Security says, yes, you're disabled. If I'm not making that amount because it's a pandemic and I don't have a job, that is not what we're talking about. We're saying that I am disabled and therefore I can't make the living because of my disability. I would get the amount that I've paid into the system, and 2 years later, I will become eligible for Medicare, which is the same health program as seniors gets. Okay, that's how it works for me and you. It works different for our child, right? Because our child hasn't worked and paid into the system. So there's another program called SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Now that is the program that is needs-based. Now, the rules, again, in order to get that, Okay, it's $783 a month this year. It goes up every year by a little bit. It's not a big check, but it's a pretty big check, right? So how do we get that? Can you get for your child if they're under 18? Well, the rules apply to mom and dad if the child's under 18, but if the child's 18 or older, the rules apply to them and not their parents. So what are the rules? Again, income limitation. We have to prove disability to Social Security. We have to prove that they cannot make substantial gainful activity because of their disability. So we prove that, just like the other program in the entitlement. We prove the disability, first of all, that their disability is stopping them from making a living. Then secondly, we have to prove on these needs-based program, the child doesn't have assets. So a lot of you have probably heard, well, you have to keep your child's dollars under 2,000. Now, as I said, if your child's under 18, these rules are applying to mom and dad. So if that's the case, your child wouldn't get benefits if you were. But if your child is 18 or older, and this applies from the month after their 18th birthday, so if your child's birthday is April 23rd, it would apply as of May 1 is when it would occur, okay? So what can our child have and still get this? Besides proving that they have a disability, the asset rules are these. They can have a house, a car, a prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account. That's it. So let's talk about what those assets are. A house. So your child can own a home. You're probably not going to have them own a home, but they could. Excuse me. They can have a car if they can drive. Okay. They can have a prepaid funeral. Sometimes we do that so we can get things done in advance. House, car, prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account. So the ABLE account we're going to talk about in a bit. It's a way that we can save money for a person with a disability that won't count against them. And then also $2,000. So what counts in that $2,000 besides the ABLE? What counts? Because the ABLE doesn't count in that number. Checking accounts, savings bonds, cash value of life insurance, mineral rigs, oil rights, all of those things that could be owned by someone. The things that get us in trouble a lot, you know, people always hear the $2,000 limit in the checking, but it's everything totaled up. So if your child's been getting savings bonds from grandma, those are going to count, okay? If that's all they have, it's okay if they only have $50 or $500 of savings bonds. But if they have savings bonds and a checking account, that's a problem, okay? Life insurance. Sometimes you buy life insurance for your child. The agent said you should buy some for your child while they're a baby and you'll get it. If it's permanent life insurance that has cash value, that cash value, while your child's a minor, is yours. When your child turns 18, can be considered theirs. So you have to look at every single asset that could be owned by your child with their Social Security number and make sure that you're positioned to not have more than $2,000. Very important, okay? So we prove all that. Let's say we prove your child has a disability. We prove they don't have any assets. You're showing Social Security everything, and they get approved. They says, yes, your child has a disability. We agree. Yes, your child doesn't have too much money. We agree. They're going to ask you one more question. Where does your child live? Well, why are they asking that? Your child's 18. Of course they live with you. So if you answer the question, they live with you, they will consider that you are giving that child a free place to live. That's called in-kind income, and your child won't get the full amount of SSI. They will get 1/3 less. So we don't want that to happen. So an easy thing to remember is your child can either pay their fair share of the household expenses, or they can pay you room and board. Now, I usually take the room and board approach because it is pretty simple. You say my child's paying $300 a month for room and board in my home. You sign some documents, and then they're paying, when they get their benefit, they'll be able to pay you that money. Some parents choose the fair share. The problem is you always have to report what the expenses of the household are in order to accommodate that. So if someone else moves into the house, expenses dynamics change. I try to keep it simple. People sometimes say, don't even do this piece, take less. And my philosophy is, you know what? I'm going to do everything I possibly can now while I'm competent. and get it all done so that no one else has to do it for my child in the future. Okay. All right. So we get our child their benefit, their SSI, and after they get their SSI, they get their Medicaid. Okay. Now, some states you have to do a separate application. Some states you do one. Sometimes it's two. California has Medi-Cal. Everybody else calls it Medicaid. All right. So what does Medicaid do? Medicaid pays for health coverage. It pays for all kinds of waiver programs. We need Medicaid. What about this health insurance thing? What is that? What's this health care? So your child, when they're 18, they're probably on your health insurance, right? As a member of your family, if you have group insurance. If your child is over 26, then they're no longer eligible for Obamacare. But in most states, there are typical rules that say if you have a child with a disability, they can stay on your group insurance as long as you have it. You got to find out, it's based upon the state that your company is domiciled in, so it's homework to be done. But many times your child can stay on your health insurance past the age of 26. So why do you need this Medicaid? Why bother? Your child's 18. Well, sometimes you have copays on your health insurance, and you could use the Medicaid for the copay. Sometimes you have drugs with high deductibles, and you could use it for that. But the other reason is programs. So if your child's coming out of school, many of the programs that are available to us for our child for support services are funded by Medicaid, and they have Medicaid waivers. So even if your child doesn't need the health insurance, they might need Medicaid to get into those programs. So those two programs go together, SSI and Medicaid. And both of them have limitations of assets, which is why we have to do some special legal planning in order to accommodate that. Now, I want to show you one more thing about benefits. I'm going to watch our time carefully so we have time to cover everything, but I want to make sure that you see this piece of it. And this has to do with what happens to your child's benefits later. So here's a copy of someone's Social Security statement, and I'm going to say it's dad's, okay? So it says the full retirement age, dad's going to get $1,800. At age 70, he's going to get over $2,200, almost $2,300, but at age 62, he's going to get less than $1,200, okay? If we go down here, I'm showing you this so that you can look at your Social Security record. Under family survivors, there's a section that the child can get over $1,200, okay? And there's also something that says the total family benefits cannot be more than that $3,116. What are all those numbers? So the first bunch of numbers would be dad's amount that he can get. The second bunch of numbers, when it says child, that is for a minor child or a disabled adult child. It's called a DAC benefit. So the child is eligible to get 1/2 while the parent is alive. When the parent retires, the child is eligible to get 1/2 of the parent's age 67 full retirement age benefit. And when the parent passes away, the child's eligible to get 2/3 of the parent's age 67 benefit. So now I'm telling you that when you retire, your child gets into this different program, right? Why is that so important? Let's talk about it. So PWD means person with a disability. When they turn 18, parents are working. Child, let's say, is going to get $783 a month from SSI, and they're going to have their Medicaid. Step one, dad retires. Dad says, I'm going to go for my Social Security. So he gets his. Mom never worked, so mom's going to get 1/2 of dad's, but there's some left over because of that family maximum. So with those numbers, the amount the child can get from the dad's record after everybody else is paid out, the maximum the child's going to get in this scenario was $410 from Social Security. Now we're looking at the top left quadrant. So if the child's going to get $410 from Social Security, how much is left of that $783 from SSI that could be paid out? $373. SSI is to bring you up to the SSI amount. Okay, we're assuming the child's paying rent and doing all the things they need to do to get their full amount. the child was getting 783, we're going to reduce that to 373 because they're getting 410 from their Social Security out of dad's record. Now, it's still 783. It's just coming in 2 checks. Why is that good? Why are 2 checks better than 1 check? Well, 2 years after the child goes into the Social Security system, look what they get. They were getting it here. 2 years after, look what they go into. The top right quadrant says Medicare. So when one of the parents retires and the child goes in up into the top of entitlements 2 years after they go into Medicare. Why is that so important? Medicaid is critical. Medicaid helps pay some healthcare programs. Not all doctors like Medicaid. Okay, it pays drugs, it pays hospitals. But what if I have a specialist and now I've retired and my child isn't on my health insurance anymore? All of a sudden, the doctor specialists aren't covered. So I want my child to get into the Medicare system. Okay, so we do a lot of careful planning around this because when dad retires, if the child is on his health insurance, when the dad retires, the child doesn't have any more health insurance. So I have to be careful about my timing because I want one parent to start their Social Security at least 2 years before the parent who had the health insurance. So that when the parent who had the health insurance retires, my child's already been into that entitlement program for 2 years and they go into Medicare. It's pretty complicated. I just want you to remember when I'm thinking about retiring, I probably should understand how this works in detail because not only does that change, but when parents pass away, remember I said the child can be eligible for more when the parents pass away. The child out of Social Security might not get SSI anymore because their Social Security might be over $1,200. That's better than 783. So what I'm telling you is these benefits are really important. The rules are complicated. You can look at, you have the homework here is get your own Social Security record. Look what mom's is, look at what dad's is if you're a couple. Look what they could get, understand your child's benefits, and plot how you're going to take your own relative to what's going to happen to your child. But your child will get more than the 783 if you have Social Security. Now, if you have worked in a system, like a teaching system, where you didn't pay into Social Security at some point, your child may not get this if you had paid into it. Okay, so a lot of things that you impact that will impact your child. Okay, so know your benefits. Okay, so things to remember. Health insurance, your child might be able to stay on it past age 26. To get your own Social Security record and look how much, where it says child benefit, how much your child can get. And then everything we talked about tonight could change. The laws are always changing. So it's important for you, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, it's important for you to stay up to speed with what's going on. Okay, so I've gone pretty quickly through this because I have a lot to cover and I want to make sure you get all of it. I think this is being recorded, so you'll be able to have access to it later. But so far we have said that you need to know what you want for your child. What's the best thing that can happen? And we have to know what we don't want to have happen. So if those are the two things we know, we want them to be happy and safe and we don't want them abused. When we're putting our life plan together, we got to think about all of that and say, how do I make sure that that plan I put in place has all the contingencies built into it to make sure those things happen? But then also we said, my child can't inherit money because they're going to lose their Medicaid, and Medicaid could fund their future housing, right? Or future programs that they could be in. So now let's talk about what we need to do legally that is different than every other couple that are friends of ours without a child with special needs. Majority of population doesn't even have wills. They don't do it. They don't think about it. But we don't get to say, well, I'm not going to worry about it. We have to worry about it. So the things we can't do. So when I started planning with my parents for my sister, my parents had a will, and the will said that they were disinheriting my sister and they were leaving her share to me. Okay, they knew they couldn't leave my sister money because it would disqualify her from, she was living residentially and getting funded by Medicaid. They knew they couldn't do that. So they gave it to me with their fingers crossed that I would take care of her. Okay, what was wrong with that? Well, if they left me money for her, it was mine. I could go to Hawaii with it, okay? Or if I was sued, someone could sue me and take the money that I was holding for her. Or worse, if I was married and put it in joint tenancy thinking my husband's a good guy and he'll take care of her with the money if I die. But what happens is he comes home one day and says, honey, I have a new babe and I'm filing for divorce. Well, if I put that money in joint tenancy so he would take care of it in case something happened to me, now it's up for grabs in a divorce. So there are so many reasons why we don't take ownership of the money that is set for our sibling as a sibling, or we don't give it to the other kids to say, well, I'm not going to spend money on an attorney. I'm just going to leave it to this child. Okay. There's risks involved. So what can we do? There's something called a third party special needs trust. First of all, you need an attorney to do this. Okay. It's a requirement. You have to have an attorney draw up a trust. So what is this trust all about? This trust, our child can't have money, right? They can't have more than the $2,000 in the ABLE account, but we can leave an inheritance into this trust. Third party means that money going into it never belonged to the child. It always belonged to someone else. So I can leave an inheritance for my son into a special needs trust. The trust says the money is spent for his supplemental care over and above what the government will pay for. So if the government's paying for his basic support with that SSI and he's got Medicaid, this is for everything else, okay? It also says when my son passes away, I'm gonna leave money for him. When he passes away, the money is going to go to who I said, not back to the government, but to who I said. So I have a trust for my son. I'm leaving a portion of my inheritance to it. And when he passes, if I pass away, it'll get funded. And when he passes away, it'll go to his brothers and my grandchildren and some charities, okay? So you can leave it to however you want. I always encourage families, if there are organizations like this that help you with your child in the future planning, that you consider them also as one of the beneficiaries of the special needs trust for your child. Okay? So this is an important legal document that it's the rules of the road. The document, the attorney prepares a book. And the book says, this is how this money can be spent. It has all the rules inside of it. It is not a one-page document. A special needs trust is a lot of paper. 2, who can create that? There's only one person who can't set it up, your child. There's only one person who can't put money in it, your child. You can create one and grandma can put money in it, okay? Who's in charge? You set it up. You are what they call the trustee. So we name who's going to be in charge. And we also name who it's for, your child. And we also say if your child passes away, who's going to get it. Those are decisions you have to make. That's what a special needs trust is. It is just a bunch of paper that says, this is the rules for this money I'm leaving for my child. It also says this money can never replace the government benefits. So your child gets to keep those benefits. Your child does not control this money. Money in the trust never goes to your child. It is to pay for services for your child, okay? Usually we only have one child in that trust because I don't want to leave the trustee, if I had 2 children with special needs, I wouldn't want to have the trustee to have to make those decisions. Now I'm the trustee, but I've got to name who after me. I got to name who's going to take that job or passing the job along, right? The trust should be irrevocable, meaning that someone just can't change it later. Social Security's want to see that. But it's really important that it's amendable to stay compliant with the law. So we want to make sure that the attorney is doing those things, that this is a trust, not till your child's 18, not till they're 25, not till they're 35. It is for their lifetime. So I want to make sure if the laws change, that the trustees after me can also make sure it always follows the rules. And if they need to go to an attorney to get it fixed, they can. Okay. When should you set this up? I sometimes talk to parents who their child's 6 and they go, I don't need to do this now, right? I prefer they're 18. No. Why? Because if your child is 6, if you're going to wait till they're 18, you got to live that long. You got to be competent that long. And none of us has the blessing to know that. Okay, we wish sometimes we could know what's going on with the world, maybe, but we don't. So since we don't know that, and if anything we have learned in these difficult times we're living through right now, is that we never know. You know, the world's a crazy place right now, right? It's scary. I was doing one of these and thinking about who am I going to pick to these jobs afterwards. And I said, if this has taught me anything, it's that I got to pick the best people for the job because anything can happen at any point in time. So when I have the attorney set this up, I don't want it inside of my will, and I don't want it inside of my trust. I want a separate document. So the attorney says, oh, we'll just stick it inside your will. No, I want to have a separate book that I walk out with called my Child Special Needs Trust. Why? The rules are good today. I don't know what the rules are going to be in the future. So when I create this special needs trust, I want the attorney to draft it. I want to read it. I want to understand it. And when I sign it, it is law. Okay. I don't want to have to depend upon some law in the future. I want to use a law today. 2, when I create the trust, I want other family members to piggyback on it. What does that mean? Well, when I create a special needs trust, I want to tell my parents if they want to leave something for my children, for my child with special needs, they can actually refer to the one that I set up. Why can they do that? Because I signed it. It exists. The trust exists when I sign it. If I put it inside of my will, the attorney just writes the language inside my will, and my will says when I die, create a trust. It doesn't exist until I die. Okay. I don't want that. We as parents want to make sure that everything we are doing is a sure thing. Okay. So when you talk to the attorney, you want a standalone special needs trust. You don't want it inside your will. Now, I got it. Once I sign it, I got it, right? How do I get money into it? Let's talk about that. Well, my will, when I die, says, there already says a trust. My will just says put the money in the trust, okay? This is how much I want to go to it. Or my life insurance can say the beneficiary of my life insurance is to go to the trust. Many of us have life insurance at work, right? We can change the beneficiaries of that to say I want some of it to go to the special needs trust for my son, Mark, right? You need to check that because when you once you sign a special needs trust, nothing should refer to your child again. You should never be leaving something directly to your child. You should be leaving it to the special needs trust. So I'm going to bet you a lot of people on here have life insurance on their job, right? You signed a piece of paper when you started your job, and they say, we're going to give you one-time salary. And you sign the form that says, leave the life insurance to my spouse, and if my spouse isn't alive, leave it to my children. Well, you can't do that anymore, okay? You would have to say to my spouse, and in my case, 1/3 to Matt, and 1/3 to Tim, and 1/3 to Mark's special needs trust. I have to be very specific when I refer to my son because I can't leave anything to him directly, just like my retirement account. If I have beneficiaries on my retirement account, if I want to go to my spouse, it's fine. But if my spouse isn't alive, I have to make sure the beneficiaries go to the special needs trust for the portion I want to go to Mark, right? Also, if I want to save for my son, I can also open an account. I have a trust. I can open an account in the name of the trust. And I like people to do that. I like them to open an account in the name of the trust, get a checkbook for it, see it, make it work so that when I have future trustees, I find after doing this for 30 years that many people have trusts and they're going to be funded when they die. And now they're 85 years old and 90 years old and they're talking to the other kids. Or I've had clients pass away. And all of a sudden the other kids who are going to be trustees in the future are stepping up going, well, I don't understand how this works. Where's the money? What's the trust? So I really like to get the trust set up in advance. I like to have checks for the trust. I have to have things moving already so that parents have confidence. And then we teach the future trustees how to deal with some of this so that if something happens, there is a very smooth transition. That's coming from my aging and watching people struggle. And we've even done some new things where parents have no one to be the trustees when they pass away. And so we've put some things together where we can work with a trust company jointly to do those responsibilities instead of having family do it, so that we're not giving that responsibility to the brothers and sisters. They're going to still be a brother and sister, but we have other professionals doing some of those things. It's all really important to understand that piece of it. Okay. There's one other kind of special needs trust I'm not going to talk a lot about. I just want you to know it exists. Okay. There is something called a first party special needs trust, or a payback trust, or an over 93 trust, or I call it oops trust. I mean, somebody made a mistake. Grandma left my child money. So if grandma leaves my child money, it's my child's money. Now they have more than $2,000. When your child gets some money, we can fix it by creating one of these special needs trusts. But what's going into it is not third-party money, but your child's money, the person with a disability's money. When we have to do these kind of trusts, they're a fix-it. They're not what we always want to do, because at the end, what happens is this trust works, your child keeps their benefits, but you'll see when the person passes away, we have to give some of the money back to the state with this kind. So, this is not our preferential way for money that our child will get. We would rather leave it directly to the third-party trust. These trusts are also used for child support. If you are divorced and you're receiving child support for your child, when your child turns 18, that child support, because it could be paid past your child's age 18, could be considered your child's money. So we take that child support and put it into, by court order, into one of these payback trusts, and the child will not lose their benefits, but they would if they just got child support directly. So just remember that, child support, and if your child gets money by mistake, we need one of these special kinds of trusts. All right, so 2 kinds of trusts. Clear? One on the left, everybody needs. One on the right, we need if you get an inheritance coming to your child, or if you're divorced and your child's going to be getting child support past age 18. All right, how do you start? How do you start with all this? Okay, you got to find an attorney. You need to find an attorney who knows what they're doing. I've seen lots of great attorneys. I've seen attorneys who don't know anything about it and send you to one of the great attorneys. And I see attorneys who really try hard to solve the problem, but sometimes it's just not their deal. And so sometimes we make mistakes. So it is really, really important for you to find the right attorney. Okay, that's the money part. So we have other decisions to make. I'm going to touch that really quickly. Is guardianship. There's hard decisions. The hardest decision is who's going to step in into your shoes when you pass away, if you're your child's guardian. Who's going to make decisions about medical and government benefits. This is the hardest thing. The person who's going to make the care decisions for your child. Are these people you're picking really going to understand what you're asking of them? Will the job outlast them? Talk to other parents, talk to family. If you have no one in your family, there are such things as corporate guardians. Should you pick the same people who are managing the money to be the guardians? All these decisions, this is something you have to be thinking about. If you're the guardian, you have the right to nominate future people. The other thing that happens is when your child's 18, you are still the parent, right? But you are not the guardian. When your child turns 18, you need to go to court. If you need to, and your child can't make decisions, you should be going to court and becoming your child's guardian. So just keep that in the back of your head too. The last thing that's legal is when the attorney says, how are you going to divide the money up? Well, in step 2, we did some calculations of how much your child needs. So when we get to this question from the attorney and they say, well, how do you want to split your estate? Our heart tells us, I got 3 children split it 3 ways. But my head is telling me, maybe I can't do that. Maybe I have to be unequal. Maybe I need to leave the special needs trust half of what I have and split the other half between the other 2. In my case, my heart is telling me be equal. It's a pretty strong pull. So my head is saying, okay, leave it equal. But then I bought some life insurance on my life, and that's going to fund the special needs trust over and above, because I don't know what's going to be left when I die. I don't know what my care needs are going to be. I don't know what I'm going to spend in retirement. So it's just a thought process you have to be thinking about. So you're going to need some tools. You're going to need some trusts. There's something new called the ABLE Act. There's not enough time here to talk about it, but it's an account that we're allowed to set up. It's a modification to the 529 for college, but it's called an ABLE. It's a 529A, and it's a way we can save money for our child tax-free. It's actually their money. We can only put a certain amount into it every year, but it is for our child's use into the future. And so we can put right now $15,000 a year into it, and they're state programs. So we have there's lots of information about ABLE accounts online, but just know this is an account you can also set up for your child that coordinates with the special needs trust. You always need a special needs trust. You may also need an ABLE account. Okay, last thing I want to cover really quickly so we leave room for questions. Let's say you have done the plan. You created a plan for your child. You did that, great. You saw the attorney. You got all your legal documents done, perfect. And your child has all their benefits and you've done all the planning and you've done all that stuff. Something happens to you and someone is going to step into your shoes as the future guardian and the future trustee. They need to know a lot, okay? So all those other things that you've done only matter if you leave instructions behind. Now, how do you know so much? How do you know so much about your child? You lived it, okay? I can say as a sister, I knew a lot about my sister, but I didn't know what my parents knew. I didn't know it, okay? When I think back when my sister passed away and my mom and dad and I had conversations, they were telling me things I didn't know. Don't assume that other people know what you know about where you want your child to live. What have you looked at already? How is your house set up? Is it your house going to become a group home? Is somebody else going to move into your house? Have you looked at group settings? Your child's already living in a residential placement? How are they funded? If your child's in school and they're in special ed, the other parents who might step in, the other people who are going to step into your shoes, think an IEP meeting is a parent-teacher meeting. We know that's not the case, right? So they need to know that. What about employment? If your child could work and could do something, what could they do? Is it volunteering? What is it? Now, medical care, we know we should write down the doctors and we know we should write down the medicine. But we also have to write down, don't see this doctor ever again, it didn't work out. These are the medicines that didn't work. The do's and the don'ts need to be documented carefully because that person stepping into your shoes doesn't have the history in their head. Social life. What makes your child happy? They may know what makes a child without special needs happy, but do they really know what makes your child happy? What are the little things? The little things, the routines. We all build routines to keep our child safe and happy. You need to tell somebody about those. You need to write them down. So not only do we need to do the plan and create the funding and make sure it's all funded, but we need to communicate what's important. We need to share it with the family, okay? It's important, it's an important step. All right, so who helps you with this? I call it your dream team. So in the middle is your person with a disability and then your family. And so out of that, we have trustees and guardians we've talked about. And then there's maybe a coach. Sometimes I act like a coach and I'm helping the trustees and guardians get things in place. But there's other people. There's medical teams and support and professionals and home support, and they're faith-based. And each of those, if I look at them all, have things that we need to put in place, right? And this is where we start. And all the things we talk about, we have to find these players who are going to be on our team so that if something happens to us, we have built those people into the plan. And we can create that book about what needs to get done for each of these different people. All right, support groups, all the different things. Now, we covered a lot. I'm going to leave a few minutes for some questions, but I would like you to do something for me before we start the questions. Only one step. What I want you to do is take out a piece of paper and write down for me the one thing. We went through all that. I know we did, right? Sometimes I do this in 2 hours. We did it in less than an hour. What is the one thing you heard quickly that you say, I got to do that? Because if you write down 10 things, I got to do this and I got to pull out the trust and I got to see if it's irrevocable and I got to do this. You got too many things on your list and you start writing a book about your child and you start doing all these things. If you have too many things on your list, you won't start. You won't start, right? If I said, I want to lose 10 pounds, I've got to write down one thing. I'm either going to work out 3 days a week, and that's all I'm going to try to do. Or maybe I'm going to throw the potato chips away from the pantry. I've got to start with one thing, right? What is your one thing that you heard when you heard me say it, you said, I got to do that? Because I want that to be your first step, okay? And if you want a reminder, you can email me or you can email someone, a friend. I always call these people your accountants. They're going to make sure that you just said what you're going to do. Write it down and then tell somebody about it. You can tell me, you can tell anybody. that you want to do this thing. And once you tell them to bug you until you do it, all right? Whatever that was. Because if you do number one, you're going to do number two. Okay. So that's a lot of information that we covered, and I covered it in a pretty short time. Again, so it's the start always with what you want and what you don't want. Start to build the vision. Start to understand and the cash flow for your child. So that's the plan with the vision. Start to make sure you have all the benefits. Get your legal documents done. Write a book about your child and build the dream team. Okay, a lot of steps to do. Which are you going to do first? Okay, now I will stop and see if there's any questions for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Marian. I know my first thing I'm going to do is start looking into getting a special needs trust. My husband and I have been talking about it forever, and we just need to take that first step. So thank you so much for all the information tonight. We do have some questions, so I'm going to jump right into them so we can get a few answered.
Okay.
The first question we have is, we are both self-employed, so we have individual insurance, and our angel qualified for medical. We created a special needs trust for her. Can we still have her qualify for Social Security and is it SSI and SSDI SSA?
Yeah. So so she has medical coverage, I heard, and you're self-employed. But yes, you are paying, if you're self-employed, you're paying self-employment tax, and that's Social Security. So I encourage anybody who's not sure to go into socialsecurity.gov and look up your record, because that will tell you how much credit you have. Okay, so that's an important step to do that. But if you're self-employed, on your tax return, you are paying Social Security. It's called self-employment tax. And so you are paying into the system, but double check it to make sure that you're getting credit for it in your Social Security record.
Perfect. And once your child is on Medicare and has Medicaid, do you need to continue private insurance coverage if you can?
Good question. So you're allowed to have, you could have private health insurance, Medicare and Medicaid. And it depends how big the company is, which comes first. You know, bigger companies, Medicare might come first, smaller companies, Medicare might come second. It's a component of financial. So that's, again, if you do your own financial plan and you see what is it going to cost for that health insurance and can you keep the health insurance, that's always going to be get better coverage typically than Medicare and Medicaid. But Medicare and Medicaid together is pretty darn good coverage. So if you can't afford the health insurance, you're probably not in a bad place. Okay, but health insurance alone with Medicaid and not Medicare, I would try to keep the health insurance if that's the situation you're in.
So this question is, my child is age 8, has a special needs trust set up by an attorney by family members. It is a revocable trust. What is the difference between revocable and irrevocable? And does my son's need to be changed?
Okay, so revocable means it can be changed, and irrevocable says it cannot be changed. Okay, so it is okay if it's revocable as long as there's no money in it. But once there is $2,000 in the trust, it needs to become irrevocable. Because if it's revocable and you have money in it, Social Security will say, well, you got money for your child, but you could change that document. And we don't know what you're doing. So once it's, many times the revocable attorneys create them as revocable trusts, but there's language inside the trust that says, if I have more than $2,000 in this trust, it becomes irrevocable. So, but if you have money in it and it's revocable, I would have it changed.
Perfect. So this is an interesting question, and maybe you can give some advice to everyone. So this question is, do you have a list of lawyers that specialize in special needs trust in each state, or how would you suggest people finding those good people? Okay.
So first of all, on our website, we do. There's a section of our website where you can go to, it's called a directory, PT Live Directory, and you can type in where you live, and it'll give you some attorneys that we have vetted. That's one. You can also go to like the Special Needs Alliance, and those are attorneys that focus on special needs. There's also another group called NALA, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, and they do both special needs work and senior work. So you have to be careful that NAILA attorney would do special needs work for young children, not just seniors. But then the Special Needs Alliance is the top of the cream of the crop of the attorneys. That doesn't mean that those are the only ones. And if you have trouble finding one, you can always email me and we'll try to help you find one in your area.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think we have time for one last question, and that is, if you have 2 PWDs, do you need 2 special needs trusts?
So you can put 2 individuals in the trust, okay? But the question I always have is, if I'm managing my children, I know how much they need, okay? So I want to figure out how much I might need for each child and fund 2 separate trusts separately, because I don't know I don't want to put my future trustees in the position to say one child needs more than the other. And how do I help them make that decision? So if one needs a lot, do I use it off of that one? And how do I have that? So many attorneys will do 2 separate trusts, and then you figure out how to fund each one.
Perfect.
Okay.
So that was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
A lot of great information, and we're just so incredibly thankful to have you on tonight, Marianne. This will not be the last time that we will hear from her at the Angelman Syndrome Foundation. We're looking to spend more time working with Marianne and her team to figure out how we can create a partnership to bring more of these resources to our families. As we know that this is areas that keep coming up and keep popping up as really, really important questions for our families as we're navigating through this journey. So I just am so thankful for you to being here tonight, Marianne. This was recorded. We will make sure to put that back up. And like she said, please go to protectedtomorrows.com. She has tons of information, and they are the best resource that you can go to as far as this goes, and we are working to, expand our supports for you as a foundation as well. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. We're really excited to be wrapping up our second week of the ASF Virtualpalooza. Stay tuned tomorrow night for our final one for this week. You don't want to miss this one either, Marianne. This is going to be exciting. It's everything IEP. So anything that you would want to know, whether you're a beginner, you're in the middle, towards the end, wherever you're at in your IEP journey, we are going to have a great information for you tonight. So we're really excited to have that. A bunch of questions just came through. So what I'll do is I'll make sure to get those to Marianne, and we'll be able to send those out to you guys later on. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.